Welcome to the March 2018 session of the SCR Connections webinar series. We're happy to have all of you with us. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers this morning. Our first guest speaker is Julie Leuzinger. She is the head of Library Learning Services at the University of North Texas, as well as the subject librarian for the Department of Political Science. She has 20 years of management and supervisory experience, and her research interests include library management, succession planning, mentoring, and political participation among college students. She is active in her local League of Women Voters and received her MLS from Texas Women's University in 2006. Our second guest speaker today is Jennifer Rowe. She is the Social Sciences and Community Engagement Librarian at the University of North Texas. She serves as subject librarian for the Departments of Anthropology, Audiology and Speech-Language Pathology, Behavior Analysis, Criminal Justice, Emergency Management and Disaster Science, Public Administration, Rehabilitation and Health Services, and Social Work. She coordinates the UNT Eagle Commons Library Funding Information Network resources and outreach to the local nonprofit community as well. She received her MLS from UNT in 2012. I'm going to go ahead and pass control of the slides over to Julie and Jennifer and let them get started. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. So Julie and I are going to talk about our research in the area of succession planning and mentoring. We met in 2009 when Julie hired me to work as a student assistant in the library. I was a grad student, and since that time we've both worked in various positions and find ourselves both now librarians in different departments. Julie has continued to be my mentor through it all and now coaches me on getting through our library's evaluation and promotion process. So Julie has always been interested in taking on management and administrative roles, has a lot of experience in that area, and she's currently a department head. And while I'm not as interested in management, I've benefited from a solid understanding of the principles of succession planning and mentoring when I've supervised student employees. So we thank you for joining us for this webinar, and we look forward to your questions at the end. And first, we're asking you to please participate in our informal poll. So we're curious about the makeup of our audience and would like to know what types of libraries you work in. Would you all be so kind as to type one of the codes represented in the slide into the chat box? And I'll give everybody some time.
Lots of academic health science.
Yeah, that's what we expected, I think. Okay. And another poll. So we're also curious what size library you work in. So if you would just use your best estimation and let us know what size.
Medium to small.
Okay, thank you.
So Jen and I started our research several years ago in the area of mentoring. So we'll start here with our own definitions of mentoring and succession planning for a baseline, and I'll let you read those on the screen on your own. We began to notice through the course of our research some overlap with succession planning and began discussing how well the two topics complemented each other. Our conversations led to questioning if there were any organizations that used mentoring in their succession plans and wondered if those programs were more or less successful. The topic of succession planning is already covered extensively in library literature. Our research focuses on how or if mentoring affects those plans. In particular, the book Succession Planning in the Library, Developing Leaders, Managing Change by Paula Singer and Gail Griffith have the greatest impact on our research. We recommend this book to anyone looking to include succession planning in their organization. During the research phase, we communicated a lot with Paula Singer, who gave her time and feedback generously, and this is an extension of their work with a focus on the inclusion of mentoring. And then, since you've read our definitions, Jen and I are curious about if you have any of these programs at your library. So if you could just comment again in the comment box if you have a mentoring plan, a succession plan, if you have both or nothing, or if you don't know, that is okay too.
A lot of neithers. Saw one vote. But I think the neithers take the
day.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So when we started our research, we had a few questions in mind. So who is responsible for succession planning in the library? How does mentoring work to enhance succession planning in the library? What are the challenges involved with succession planning and mentoring, and what are the reasons that people are not implementing those types of plans? And when can succession planning through mentoring be applied to other areas besides just management? We attempted to answer these questions by conducting a review of the business literature, higher education, and library literature, and we distributed a survey, collected survey responses from library employees. So our survey asked 25 questions, including questions that collected demographic information, what type of library, what size library, the individual's role in the library, whether they were an administrator, a staff member, a middle manager. Our succession planning and mentoring research had 2 independent variables. So we sent out a questionnaire, and there were 2 special questions that we felt the responses to those 2 questions would influence the rest of the answers. And those 2 were whether or not their library had a succession plan and whether or not their library had a mentoring plan. So the rest of the questions were created with the end results of succession planning or mentoring in mind. For example, we asked the questions, my library has employees who already possess the skills to step into management or administrative positions if they become vacant today. Another question was, and then the answer was on a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Another question was, my library provides or supports training that improves my skill set. Again, strongly agree to strongly disagree, and we left I don't know as an option. The survey was distributed to several library lists, and then Paula Singer, the author of the book we mentioned, forwarded it to her client list as well. We got 230 complete responses where they answered all the demographic questions and most of the other questions, and we'll briefly discuss some of the trends we observed with the data that we got back. If you're interested in seeing all the questions, there is a link in our resources at the end if you'd like to see what all the questions and responses are. For your interest here, we're including a few demographic visuals so you know a little bit about our 230 respondents. And here you're seeing the breakdown on the type of library where respondents worked. So most are public and academic. And this is the number of employees at each library. So of our participants, the highest percentage
worked in libraries of 11 to 50 employees, which we considered a medium-sized library. And then our largest group of respondents were from library administration, which is probably helpful since they're most likely to know what kind of programming they have available in the library. Here's our breakdown of all respondents in these areas for succession planning and mentoring. But overall, public libraries more frequently had succession plans in place than participants from other types of libraries, and school libraries appear to be leading the way in mentoring programs. I'll spend a little bit of extra time here on this slide since the focus of our research is here, and then I'll pass it back to Jen to talk about the findings for our research questions. The results here reflected what is already stated in the literature. For example, organizations with no succession plans are more likely to have leadership vacancies for over 12 months, and those interested in leadership roles are more likely to leave to go work somewhere else for advancement opportunities. Organizations that have formal mentoring programs are more likely to ask staff their long-term career goals, as well as provide them with challenging stretch assignments that help them achieve those goals. 9% of our respondents had both a succession plan and a formal mentoring program. Our survey results indicated that this group had a likelihood of greater engagement on the part of the organization and staff members as opposed to those without. If you're the type who enjoys numbers, I would encourage you to look at the article with the link at the end or download our data set that is in our library repository and play around with the spreadsheet yourself and make your own comparisons. The links for both are on the resource page at the end. And now Jen is going to talk further about our research questions looking at both our data and the literature.
So first question, who bears responsibility for succession planning in the library? And the quick answer is everyone. So managers and administrators are the obvious answer here, but our research our review of the literature revealed human resources professionals, veteran employees, advisory boards, and the successors or mentors can all play crucial roles in the succession planning process. So longtime employees can help to identify knowledge and skills gaps to assist with the succession planning process. For an organizational succession plan to really work, there needs to be support from all levels of the organization, and there does need to be two-way communication so that the organizational leaders are familiar with the career aspirations of individuals within their organization. It shouldn't just be from the top down. It should be communication all around. So when leaders know the career goals of their staff, they can use this information to provide opportunities for professional growth. And future potential leaders can be identified and groomed in this way. So professional organizations are also important to acknowledge in this section. They can play a key role in succession planning as they often provide formal or informal mentoring that helps to prepare employees for leadership and for specialized jobs. So how does mentoring enhance succession planning in the library? Evidence suggests that mentoring is beneficial for not only the mentor and the mentee, but for the entire organization. So because mentoring boosts self-esteem and confidence of mentees and is correlated with increased compensation for mentees, greater job satisfaction, and of course increased understanding of the organization, it directly contributes to a succession plan by preparing employees to take on new or greater responsibilities, including leadership roles. And the mentor is also likely to see benefits from being a mentor: career revitalization, social recognition, personal satisfaction, increased power within the organization, and development of supervisory and leadership skills. And our survey results really supported what we found in the literature, that libraries that have succession and or mentoring plans in place are more likely to have employees that are ready to step into leadership roles than organizations that have neither. So knowledge sharing, less turnover, and greater staff productivity are known positive effects of succession planning and mentoring. What are some of the challenges involved with succession planning and mentoring in the library? So first I'll start with what elements of mentoring should be included in a succession plan for an organization. So first of all, people should be asked to identify their career goals and their aspirations, and then this information can be used to assign tasks that challenge people and that cultivate new skills and experience. Mentees should self-inventory their skills, so this information can be used to identify who's good at what and to plan accordingly. There should be sponsorship or coaching for mentees from more experienced professionals. And there should be an element of trust between the mentee and the mentor and advocacy on behalf of the mentee. And with all those factors in mind, time can be a first challenging aspect of succession planning and mentoring. So you have to have the time to entertain and implement these ideas. There's a time investment at the beginning to implement a plan, and there should be time invested in upkeep and maintenance periodically. The organization's strategic goals will change, and the individuals and their goals and aspirations may change as well. For mentors, obviously there can be a large time commitment, especially if the aim of the mentoring is to help the mentee get promoted or to achieve tenure. But mentor really can be a light time commitment as well, in which the mentor just provides advice when asked or provides guidance for only a few hours of a month. Getting mentors invested is another challenge. It's important that mentors recognize the implicit value of mentoring their colleagues. If mentors don't believe that what they're doing has value, regardless of the tangible outcomes for themselves or their mentees, they're less likely to be fully invested in a mentoring program. So folks really have to get on board with the paying it forward mentality, where you recognize that you may be investing precious time in an employee who will leave the organization, but you invest that time anyway because you care not only about that individual that you're helping to prepare for future jobs, but the profession in general. So the other big challenge is getting buy-in from all levels of the organization. So the resources and time necessary to do it need to be allocated by those at the top. A mentoring program should be for all employees, and depending on the size of the organization, this could be a daunting prospect, given the staff hours that will need to be invested in the program. So it helps if administrators recognize the benefit of succession planning and mentoring and the return on investment for the organization. And when can succession planning through mentoring be applied to other areas of the library besides management? So succession planning and mentoring can both be used to groom employees for very specialized jobs. For example, those employees in the library who come from other fields and have a special skill set, they can share their expertise and help prepare other employees to do their jobs. Mentoring and succession planning can be applied to any area of the library where special skills and expertise are learned slowly over time. So beginning catalogers, new subject librarians, paraprofessionals, and student employees can all be oriented and guided by mentors who ask them their aspirations, require that they inventory their skills, provide them with stretch assignments to facilitate professional growth, and who advocate on their behalf. And bench strength is one concept that we read about a lot when we were researching this topic. So by providing mentoring, training, providing challenging assignments, and promoting leadership skills to all employees, then you raise the level for everyone so that all employees are being prepared for change, either for leadership roles or to take on different tasks. So by creating bench strength, the idea is that when there's a retirement or an emergency succession planning situation, you have employees that are somewhat more prepared for the change and can step into new roles.
Mentoring should be a central component to succession planning. Mentoring can facilitate leaders being identified and prepared for leadership and other key roles within the library. This study, combined with the literature, provides evidence to libraries that adopting mentoring plans may enhance their succession plans. We suggest leveraging existing mentoring plans to support succession planning efforts to maximize benefits and minimize resources spent on succession planning. Organizational mentoring that facilitates the organization reaching its strategic goals and meeting current and future staffing needs is one type of mentoring plan that directly supports succession planning. And any organizational mentoring plan should be available to anyone, including support staff, identifying the key competencies that positions have in common with the intent of building these up with all staff is a great place to start. This approach can increase the diversity of the leadership pool within the organization. Then, mentoring can be used not just to prepare leaders, but to support employees with very specialized skill sets to make sure there are suitable successors to help or replace them, if they leave the organization.
And mentoring network. So having a mentoring culture and a formal plan within your organization is ideal, but we understand that in many organizations that will just not be possible, either due to the size of the organization or due to a lack of buy-in at all levels. As we've mentioned, that's one of the big challenges. So creating a network of mentors for yourself can help you ensure that you're receiving and giving professional support, really that's not dependent on a mentoring program within your organization. So you should have mentors from outside of your own organization, regardless of whether there's a mentoring plan within your organization or not. So one of the roles a mentor can fill is to provide emotional support, and sometimes, obviously, you won't be able to fully confide in coworkers. So that's one of the reasons it's important to have someone outside of the organization who can provide professional advice and is a trusted confidant. We highly recommend the book by Murphy and Cram called Strategic Relationships at Work, Creating Your Circle of Mentors, Sponsors, and Peers for Success in Business and Life, and it's listed in one of our slides at the end. The circle of mentors is so important to have because it means that you have different mentors for different stages in your career and for different situations. So from within your organization, you may have a mentor that helps you get oriented when you start your job. You may have a mentor that helps you understand how to get promoted if your library has a promotion or tenure system. And outside your organization, you may have mentors who you've served on committees with or colleagues at other organizations who do the same type of work that you do. One of the key concepts of the circle of mentors or the mentor network is that you'll have mentors who are your seniors, mentors who are your peers, and also mentors who are newer to the profession. And each of these different perspectives will be valuable in different situations. So I still consider an ex-coworker to be amongst my informal network of mentors. She's a younger librarian than me, but she has a very different working style from my own. But she has a unique perspective that I very much value, and there are certain situations in which I'll call her up and ask her for advice. So, for example, she's much better with technology than I am. So if I need to know what type of tech will solve a particular problem, I call her. And so I consider her a mentor. Professional associations can be a great way to build a network of mentors. The more active you are, even just on listservs or on committees within professional organizations, the more people you'll meet and engage with. Social media can also be a great way to cultivate that network. So you can leverage LinkedIn and Facebook to make connections and create developmental networks through which you can both mentor and be mentored.
From our poll, we know that many of you are working in medium-sized libraries. So many of the things we discussed could apply to you, but we are aware that some of you are in very small or are solo librarians. So circumstances may look much different from your perspective. And we certainly don't claim to have all the answers for you, since neither of us have backgrounds in these types of libraries. Jen and I both work in a large academic library, but we did spend a lot of time discussing the differences and did some additional research outside of our area of expertise. We believe creating those professional mentoring networks is particularly essential for you, not only for professional development, but for that support system of colleagues that Jen mentioned. And your network can be beneficial to you when it comes to negotiating for more library staff, since you cannot have successors without staff. If you don't feel your negotiation and advocacy skills are awesome, we encourage you to do some reading or look for some training in that area. Many of the leadership programs that we'll discuss provide coaching in this area. I know from experience from attending one, it had helped me out some in this area. Look to other fields for guidance. For example, tips for small businesses or solo attorneys can have valuable succession planning ideas. For those of you in small but not solo libraries, when you have job openings for support staff, you can consider hiring students working on their MLS degree. Many of them are going to be very motivated and very enthusiastic about having the mentoring and practical experience.
So we've put together a slide with some resources for mentoring and leadership training from professional organizations. You may be aware of many of these already, but we thought it was worth pointing out again because of the valuable training and mentoring that some of these programs provide. And one program in particular that I'm guessing many of you are familiar with, what we mentioned in our article, was the Leadership Fellows Program of the National Library of Medicine and the Association of Academic Health Sciences Libraries, which has a mentoring component and prepares emerging leaders for positions as directors of health sciences libraries. So, but there are other programs listed here that aren't necessarily just for people who are interested in management or administration. We certainly believe that more of these types of programs would be beneficial for the profession, given that not all libraries offer internal support for mentoring or leadership training. So many of the programs that are here offer scholarships or stipends to help offset the cost of attendance if that's an issue. And then we've listed some of the, or all of the things that we've referenced here today. There's included is a link to our data set and to the article that we've based our presentation on. But we particularly just chose the books that we thought would be most helpful for those that are interested in implementing a succession or a mentoring plan in their own organization. And we're happy to take questions from you all if there's anything we can talk more about.
All right, thank you, Julie and Jennifer. If we have plenty of time for questions, so if you would go ahead and enter any questions that you have into the chat box, we'd be happy to field those at this time. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes to see what questions people have.
Sarah, I know one of the things that you asked us when we were preparing for this was like the time commitment, and it really depends on your circumstances and how engaged you are, but it could be going to lunch once a month and just totally directed by the mentee asking questions of the mentor, or it can be a very intensive, time-consuming succession plan. So it does depend on how much time people want to invest and what the requirements are for the organization.
Thank you for that. We do have a couple of questions coming in the chat box. One is a simple one, just wanting to know the publisher of the Murphy and Cram book. You guys have that?
I maybe omitted that from the citation. That wasn't an accident, if so.
Oh, we didn't omit it from there.
We're librarians. didn't even format the citation correctly. Sorry about that.
It is on our citation list for our article, so you can go to the link to get the article there and scroll to the bottom.
Actually, I don't know if that one is in our...
And I've actually talked to Wendy Murphy, and she's very approachable and responded to a lot of our questions and gave us feedback.
Great. All right, we have another question about tips for succession planning for solo librarians. So for those librarians who are working by themselves, do you have any tips for those people?
I think, as we mentioned, having a network, a mentoring network of that you create for yourself is going to be the best place to start. And professional organizations are where you can find newer librarians that need mentoring from more experienced librarians, and that's where you can find some of your successors. And I had to look at, well, we included in our recommended readings, I found an article, Learning in Spite of Being Solo from Librarian Information Update, but I also just Googled tips on succession planning for solo attorneys, lawyers, and also for small businesses. So I think in that case, again, Jen and I's background is in a large academic library, so I definitely wouldn't want to tell you something without the experience, but I would try to apply some of the tips from those websites for solo attorneys and small businesses and see what they have that can translate that is applicable for you, because I do not see a lot of literature. Well, there wasn't any library literature in that area, so I had to look at other fields.
Awesome, great suggestions there, thank you. We have several more questions in the chat box. The next one, can you point to any mentoring resources or programs that are focused specifically on skill building for library support staff? And additionally, any such materials or programs geared to develop the same for larger organizations or facilities under the guidance of a facility, library, or education division.
On the support staff one, Julie Tadaro has a webinar program through Texas Library Association, which I know that's Texas-centric, but she was just the ALA president, so I feel okay throwing that out there. But I heard a lot of good feedback about that, so I would highly recommend that for support staff. What was the other question?
And I'll just throw out McGraw-Hill is the publisher of the Murphy and Cram.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh,
what
great.
was the other question, Sarah, after the support staff?
Yeah, the second question was any of similar materials and programs that are geared to be developed for larger organizations under the guidance of a library or education division. So I think it's kind of a secondary question on that.
I know a lot of the things that Paula Singer that we mentioned, and her book is on the list here. She does a lot with succession planning and larger libraries, and she's a consultant, though I don't know if that's kind of where the person was going with that question, but that would be someone that you hired from the outside and helped you create a succession plan for your library. But the book is very, very good and goes through step by step how you could apply it to your library. If you have the means to have a consultant come in, that's definitely one way to do it, but their book is very, very specific and thorough and could help an organization through creating that program.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answers the person's question. Another question, and I recognize this kind of scenario because I've been in one myself. One of our participants is in a hospital library where there are 4 FTEs and 3 of the 4 of them are going to retire in the next 4 years. Do you have any tips on succession planning for that kind of scenario?
You need an emergency succession plan.
And it would be ideal to hire people now, but obviously that won't always be possible.
One of the things the literature recommends is to start looking at key competencies for every position that you have to make sure that the library is continuing to function, and it's not a bad time also to look at if there are things that you're doing that don't need to be, you're not needing to be doing that anymore, but like breaking it down to the bare bones of the skills that you need to have the library keep running, and those are the things that you can look for in, so say you've got somebody retiring next year, when you are, when you're posting the job to refill that position, I would prioritize those skills and competencies and make sure that you're getting those out of the next person that you hire, and then keep going down the list as you fill those positions in order of importance of those technical skills that you need. And that's also actually outlined in Paula Singer's book.
Great, and I can tell you from personal experience, I was in a very similar situation where many of the librarians had retired right before me. And just one additional thing I would add, it's often a good time to take a hard look at what your position descriptions are. Do those need to change going forward for your library to remain sustainable? I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. I also thank you to Mary, sent out a link to an article that was published by Louise McLaughlin, who's here in the South Central region, is very active in the field of solo librarians, wrote the article, Goodbye and Hello, a Handoff Checklist. So those of you who are interested in that, I think that would be a great resource as well. Thanks for sharing that, Mary.
Thank you. Yeah, that was after we finished writing our article, so otherwise I bet we would have found it.
Great. All right, we have another question about, in a larger institution, do you recommend group mentoring, and if so, any suggestions on how that would work?
We are doing group mentoring at our library. Jen's been involved with it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, we each have, through this program, it is a specialized program for newer librarians, and so the goal is to mentor us to become better at research and scholarship. And through this program, we each have assigned a one-on-one mentor, but then there are group meetings where we sort of have, there's an element of group mentoring. Maybe there's one meeting convener who is the program coordinator and who kind of serves as a mentor for all of us. And that's been very helpful for just having a group forum for discussing issues and concerns and challenges with the scholarship component of my job. So I don't know if that's similar to what the group scenario that you're.
Yeah, if you have a large enough library, I think, and I have a newer librarian that started about a year after Jen started. She's been involved, and she's talked about how great the program is, and I'm on the committee that is working on that, but I'm not the chair of the committee. We have our email listed here at the end, and if anybody is interested in more specifics on that, I will happily put you in charge with Karen, who is the chair of our mentoring committee.
Thank you.
I just do what she tells me to do as a part of the committee.
All right, these are great questions coming in. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to add those to the chat box. We do have both Julie and Jennifer's contact information there on the screen, and they're happy to take any emails if you have any additional questions you'd like to follow up with either of them.
We really are happy to respond to any email follow-ups.
All right, well, it looks like there are no more questions right now, so I'm going to say thank you so much to Julie and Jennifer for your wonderful presentation today, and ask everyone to hang around for just a few more minutes as we do some final housekeeping. So thank you again, Julie and Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'll move to some final housekeeping.